Blessings and welcome to today's Law Enforcement Daily Devotional. I know yesterday when we talked about how we were going to be in 2 Kings chapter 25, then we were going to jump over into 2 Chronicles chapter 36, jump to Jeremiah chapter 39, then jump to chapter 52. We're going to go to Ezekiel and read chapter 24, back to Jeremiah chapter 21 and 22, and then we're going to finish off in Jeremiah chapter 32. It looked kind of convoluted and confusing, but if you read it today, you see how it all fell into place. We're looking at this timeline, uh, the 9th year of the 10th month and the 10th day of the exile. Okay, this timeline it shows up in 2 Kings. Then it shows up in 2 Chronicles, then it shows up in Jeremiah, then it shows up in Ezekiel, and you start seeing this pattern of all these, what's going on this day, and this day is very important. But 2 Kings chapter 25 verse 1, Nebuchadnezzar gets to Jerusalem and the war is on, or I should say the siege is on. There wasn't really a war, but they built a siege wall around the city so nobody could escape. They're going to put ramps up and they're going to take the city. 2 Chronicles chapter 36, King Zedekiah rebels against Nebuchadnezzar, and that's what has caused all this, his rebellion. Israel is just always known for their rebellion. They're always rebelling against somebody, against God. This one was against God and Nebuchadnezzar. So, but verses 14 and 16 here in 2 Chronicles touch on what we talked about yesterday of what's going on in Jerusalem, that there's no law enforcement and there's no justice in the city. People are just doing as much evil as they can get away with. We go to Jeremiah 39:1. And Jeremiah, we see Jeremiah's been arrested by King Zedekiah because he doesn't like what Jeremiah prophesied. He doesn't want to hear the truth. And so to keep Jeremiah from speaking the truth, he's going to arrest him. All this is happening on the same day. Then Ezekiel chapter 24 verse 1, God speaks to Ezekiel, and it lays out this exact same day. And in verse 2, God says, Son of man, write the name of the day, this very day. The king of Babylon has laid siege to Jerusalem this very day. Ezekiel is in Babylon with the captives. And like I said, they've been there for 9 years. So you can imagine in those days, news would not have traveled back the same day. Hey, Jerusalem, they've laid siege to the city. It would have taken weeks for this news to come back to Babylon. But God tells Ezekiel the very day, and he says, write this day down. This is when it happened. Then we go to Jeremiah 21 verse 8, and it says, You shall say to this people, thus says the Lord, Behold, I set before you the way of life and the way of death. You got to make a choice. And this is still true for us today. The path of life and death is set before us. We can either follow Jesus Christ or not. And not is everything else. Christ leads to salvation in heaven. Everything else leads to the opposite of that. Hell, destruction. We spoke yesterday of Ezekiel chapter 22 about the lawlessness of Jerusalem and how they had no law enforcement. There was nobody there to keep them at bay. There was no thin blue line to separate civility and chaos. So chaos ran rampant and the city was torn up. Jeremiah 21:12 says, Administer justice every morning and deliver the person who has been robbed from the power of his oppressor, that my wrath may not go forth like fire and burn with none to extinguish it because of the evil of their deeds. That's what God was telling them. This was his expectation of the city of Jerusalem, and they failed miserably. And then the very next chapter, he ends with this, chapter 22, verse 3. It says, Thus says the Lord, Do justice and righteousness, and deliver the one who has been robbed from the power of his oppressor. Also do not mistreat or do violence to the stranger, the orphan, or the widow, and do not shed innocent blood in this place. God says he would have delivered them if they would have just followed his commands, but they rebelled and they wouldn't do it. We've got to follow God's commands. We've got to obey, we've got to obey the rules. We've got to be a righteous, just people. And we've got to do our job well so that our civilization does not start to look like what Jerusalem looked like, because God was really upset with them, and they incurred his wrath. And man, we don't ever want to do that. It's a good law enforcement takeaway. It really goes to how important our job is and what God has called us to. Tomorrow, we're in Jeremiah chapter 30 and 31, and then we're going to jump over and catch chapter 33. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We'll have a read and a law enforcement takeaway, hopefully. But until then, you guys be safe, and God bless you.